We're back again, and we're talking about communication strategies. Communication is so important with business. It can mean great success or great failure to any problem opportunity.
It does indeed.
So, g'day. You're with Simo and Ed, and you're watching the Fast Line Track Growth Show, where we talk all things karting and business.
Cool.
Today is the second part of our communication strategy videos.
It really is.
Right. Last week we talked about establishing and identifying the problem, the opportunity, the issue you're talking about. Then we talked about identifying who is impacted, and then we talked about identifying the measurables.
Yep.
So, and this week, what's the first thing we're going to talk about?
Well, we're going to dive straight into the next thing I want to have a look at now is being aware of the inputs, as I call them. So these are factors now that you've got to be aware of to make or break the success of, it'd be like a mini project, but the communication strategy. Now, typically they break down into two areas. One is a leading indicator and one is a lagging indicator. Those of you in the financial markets will probably already have an idea of what we're going to talk about now, but leading indicators, that's all the stuff that's happening in the future. So in business terms, things like if you're doing a bit of marketing and you're putting that out there, that's a leading thing. You're sort of casting the net, as it were, into the future, and you're hoping that something will happen as a result. And then if you're looking at lagging factors, just to keep the analogy simple, in business it would be the amount of revenue you've just generated or the profit or how things have been done up until that point. So you need to be aware of these indicators because they'll have an impact on the communication. If you've got somebody that has developed, say, a reordering process for your food and beverages down at the track, and they're taking great pride over doing it, and you're aware of this is a historic thing, this is the way we do things around here, but you now know there's a new opportunity or there's a problem with that, then you do really need to be aware that the input from the person who's got that as their little baby probably going to have a big impact on the communication style and results that you're going to get when you have a conversation with them. And equally, if you're looking into the future, I could sit here and go, there's a fantastic way you can go and get some more business for Fastline. And I just go and blurt it out, not knowing that actually you're quite happy where I am, thank you very much. And the classic I come across often with other businesses, I sit down and have a look at the websites. It's a great insight into the marketing of a business. Most websites suck, by the way. And you've got to be really careful around that because if you just blurt out, look, your website's a bit shit. The number of times that you hear people go, yeah, my son stroke daughter made that for us while they did this at Kart and we're really proud of it. You can imagine the communication from there on in is going to be very difficult. So you may want to get better at questioning to understand what's really going on. So something like, talk me through what's happening with your website. Yeah, it might be a great starting point to uncover the fact that something has happened where you've got to just be aware if you're going to get the communication across to embody this opportunity or threat. You've got to take all the factors into account.
Well, questioning is just so important for lots of things.
Yes, crack everything.
It's used in sales.
Yeah.
You use it in understanding the problems, the things. But questioning probably isn't used enough.
There's a great book, and I've forgotten the name of it. What I'm going to do is going to put it into the comments when this goes live. But I think it's called something like Ask a Better Question. But the value of the answers you get in life are down to the questions you give out, is the gist of it. But this is everything in life. Like, better questioning just leads to better outcomes all the way around. I can't prove this, but I'm convinced the best leaders in the world are the ones who ask the best questions. And as a result, the answers they get back are the ones that help them or the people around them or everybody the most. And as a result, they get better rewards for it. But if somebody wants to go and pay me to do a PhD on this, I'd be very happy to take some grant funding and go and analyse that around the world, I think, for a couple of years, all expenses paid. I mean, with a fund. We're going to have a look at that together.
Point number 5.
Yeah.
So now we're looking at breaking down the milestones.
Yeah, so by this point we've already got some of the measurables in place. We've got an idea of where we're heading, but we want to now put some sort of time on this. So if it's a complex project, or any project really, but break it down into milestones so that you can start to visualise the steps that are going to be required. that may highlight who else needs to get involved and who needs to be communicated with. But also, as you're moving along, you can feel the progress. And that will give, like any project you've got, a bit of impetus, but also the people involved in that communication, it could help them feel involved, part of something. It's just exciting to be. Some companies, some kart tracks are just exciting to be involved in. Yeah. It's because all the staff feel like they're involved in the communication and they can feel the progress is being made.
Yeah, and what's the best way to eat an elephant?
Yes, a bit at a time.
Yeah, you have your milestones.
Yeah.
You have your micro tasks. It's all about achieving that thing. Because if the project is big, you may and you don't have those milestones established, you may feel like you're on the never-ending journey.
Yeah.
And you don't know where you are along that process. Are you nearing the finish line, or are you years away? So milestones are important.
Yeah, it also gives you a deadline as well.
Yeah.
Nothing in this world happens without a deadline.
No.
If you haven't got a deadline, nothing happens in business. So it enables you to put a deadline into place, but also as well, you're going to get those conversation pieces where some of the procedures that are being written, for example, is a really great example in Fastline. Everybody here pretty much is going to be involved in writing the procedures. No, we've got a rough idea, or we're starting to build that up, about how long that is going to take. And then we've got people involved in that now looking at that and looking at their workload and starting to understand what's being involved. And those milestones will help them say, yes, I can do it, or I might need a bit of help here. So it just flushes out sort of the problems early on, and it keeps the communication channels flowing by just discussing around milestones, and gives you a better chance of project success as well.
Yeah, I mean, deadlines are great. I've got to make sure that there's one of these videos out every Thursday.
Yep.
And we must be up to...
Like high 30s,
we're into the 40s now.
Oh, we cool.
And okay, I've delivered a couple late.
Have you?
I've delivered a couple on Fridays.
Yeah.
Only 2 or 3 now. But since we've got Josie on board, they've been hitting every Thursday.
Well, the classic is when I did all my IT degree stuff. I don't know how we probably have semesters of. I want to say 10 weeks. I can't even remember. It's been a while. This grey hair is real. But the 10 weeks to run at it, pretty much my lecturers are really cool, so they tell you what the project's going to look like at the end. So doing all this great communication. And then I'd write pretty much all the stuff I had to hand in with about 48 hours left till the end of the deadline, like every other student in this world. So nothing happens without a deadline.
Yeah.
Milestones will help you understand that. When you're a bit younger, you just throw the milestones out the window and just have one milestone. I haven't written the essay that needs to be in 48 hours, and I've now handed in the essay that has to be handed in 48 hours. It'd be great if I could have stretched it out a bit, had a chat with the lecturers about bits and pieces. I wish I'd had a bit more time to explore with them. But there you go, I somehow passed and got a degree. So I did something all right.
Point number 6.
Yes.
Discuss and agree how change will be handled.
Absolutely. So again, this is great communication. I think people get very fixed in what they're doing. Now, on a longer project, let's say it's a 3-month project. By the way, just throw this in as this is a great tip. Don't let any of your projects run for longer than 6 months. Right? They just don't get delivered. We could do a whole video on that. We might do a video on it. I'll talk to you and bore you a little potentially, but it would be so valuable around why no project should ever last more than 6 months. They just don't get delivered. Look at all your government projects that last longer than 6 months, and you tell me how they're doing. And don't matter what country in the world you're in, there's just a problem. Anyway, we digress. So on a longer project, we set out with an idea of where it's going to end and get everything all mapped out, and all the milestones are in there, right? Which is great. But the great news as well is we live in very dynamic environments, so shit can happen.
Yeah.
A new bit of software might be suddenly dreamt up and available, and we might be the guinea pig put down at the track.
Or how about this?
Yeah.
Just about every country in the world goes into house arrest.
Yeah, well,
Can
exactly.
you believe that?
Like that would never happen.
No.
Yeah, so shit is going to happen.
Mm.
Right, so that means we need to understand what change looks like within communication or within a project as well. So we need a process to handle what change looks like. So do we repeat the process that we just outlined in the last video and we're just about to tail off towards the end on this video? Is there going to be a new way of communication? Have we identified that actually out of the 8 to 9 people that were in the communication early on, 2 or 3 are just going to be the ones that are going to take the decision moving forward? And can we agree what that looks like before we start the project so that nobody gets surprises, so the communication doesn't turn to an all-out slanging match and the strap down in the car park?
Yeah. Well, that nearly turned out that way here.
Oh, yeah.
Today.
Because you're all passionate about business.
There was a change that wasn't fully communicated. You know, people thought it was happening one way and people thought it was happening another way. You know, and it didn't happen for 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, the viewers are probably sitting there wondering how we come up with this stuff. It's based on real life.
Yeah.
You don't need a soap opera to watch on television. Just tune in.
So this is, you know, your real life Kardashians, eh?
That's right. Oh, camera loves them though.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he loves us.
I don't think we have enough drama in our life, you know.
Speak for yourself.
Right, and point number 7, our last point.
Yeah, the last point then. So, right, who's going to own this?
Yeah.
Now, I would be, wherever possible, I'd be recommending one person owns it.
Yeah.
Because that makes for a speedy decision and it also speeds up communication. That's not always possible for all sorts of reasons that you don't need me to tell you about. We all understand that. But who's going to own it so that they can make sure that what we've agreed has been delivered on? So what was discussed has now happened. Or effectively, in project terms, they call it sign-off. So how do you get a sign-off, you know? So when will you know it's been delivered is a really good question in project management. In communication, just day to day, when somebody's talking about something that needs to happen and somebody else agrees to do something, it's a really great question. Just before you go away, I know you're going to sort that out. Just tell me, how will you know when that's been delivered? And they'll get, no, that's your finish line. And when are you doing that by? By this date. Fantastic. Right, so I now know what it looks like and I now know there's a deadline. So that's a nice, simple, quick conversation that you can use in all your communication that will just help aid understanding. Because if they describe something completely different, you now go, hang on a second.
Hang on,
we're only painting the fence. We're not painting the whole side of the warehouse.
Who said we were going to put the Sistine Chapel in there?
That's right. Why is it going to take 3.5 years? I'm going to need scaffolding while you're painting on the ceiling. So it's a great way to go and make sure that the sign-off is, and we define it at the beginning, but also what it looks like at the end. And make sure one person's responsible, ideally. You don't want death by committee.
Yeah.
In fact, that'd be a great video.
Death by committee.
Well, during World War II, there's a great sort of way that spies used to infiltrate and go and cause mayhem for other countries, right? And there was a whole rule book on how to really screw things over.
Yeah.
And what it was all counter-terrorism, all terrorism techniques for slowing down communication. We should perhaps do a video which is the antithesis of what we've just done over the last 2 videos, because it's really fascinating reading. I will dig it out and we will have a chat. And if you want to see that video, then let us know. But you and me will have a chat.
Yeah.
I'll dig all that information out and it will just show you how they really slowed down decision-making processes to make people absolutely useless at what they're trying to achieve. And it was a really great spy tactic that they used in, it wasn't MI6 in the UK then, I think it was called something else, but it might have been SOE. But their rule book for how you do that is a fantastic lesson in business around communication and how things can go really wrong, but also how to spot it.
Right.
When you've got troublesome employees. So, well, we can do that, but we could circle back around and go, whoa, hang on a minute. I know what you're up to. I might do a session on that.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's the end of our discussion on communication strategies.
Yes.
I hope we've been of value.
Communicated it.
Well, I hope we've communicated it well. Right, so it's goodbye from me.
Cheerio from me.
And we'll see you next week.
Look forward to it. Bye.
Ciao.